Hey everyone, Jordan here with the review of Root Double Before Crime After Days Xtend Edition. That is a bit of a mouthful, but yeah, this review was written by visual novel aficionado Miguel Marion, who's far more knowledgeable about the genre than ourselves. So these are his words, let's see what he thinks. I'm gonna guess that the name Nazakawa Takumi probably won't ring any bells to most people out there, but back in the early 2000s, both Nakazawa Takumi and Uchikoshi Kotaro worked on the now cult classic trilogy of visual novels called the Infinity series, consisting of Never 7, Ever 17, and Remember 11. Afterwards, both of them would go on to working on their own respective projects, with Uchikoshi's most noticeable work being the Zero Escape series, and from Nakazawa's side, I.O. and our game in question right now, Root Double. There is something, however, that's tying all of these titles together, that being their complex yet intricate mysteries deep within a sci-fi setting. So comparisons to those titles are pretty much unavoidable here. The question is, does Root Double stand on its own? The story takes place inside Labo. No, nothing to do with Nintendo Labo. This is a giant research facility where on September 16th, 2030, suddenly several explosions go off, causing a malfunction on all the security systems, as well as a nuclear reactor meltdown, locking down a total of 9 people consisting of 3 rescuers and 6 civilians. It should come to the surprise of no one that being trapped right next to a nuclear reactor that's on the brink of collapse isn't exactly good news. Fortunately, they have AD, which basically stands for anti-radiation drug. Unfortunately, they don't have nearly enough for all of them. With time not on their side, our cast of characters must move forward, finding enough doses to survive in the hopes of eventually getting out of this hellish facility. It's certainly an effective setup that right from the get-go perfectly conveys the overall urgency of the situation. The game lets you choose between 2 routes with different protagonists. The After route, which tells the events of the captain of the rescue squad, Watashi Kazagi, and the Before route with our second protagonist, the high school student Natsuhiko Tenkawa. As you may have been able to deduce from those route names, they basically stand for after and before the incident respectively. Ironically though, it is a better idea to go through the after route before the before route to avoid some spoilers. The reason being, Watashi Kazagi actually suffers from amnesia. Now, amnesiac protagonists aren't exactly the most enjoyable characters to deal with, especially in games where there's an overall mystery to be solved. Basically, it means that before the plot can truly begin to unravel, you must deal with the protagonist trying to remember who he is and what he is doing, which can slow down the pace somewhat. Does Root Double deal with this issue properly? Well, not really. While there's some enjoyment to be had seeing Watashi slowly remember himself, it can feel at times like the questions just keep piling up one after another, non-stop. On the other hand, the Before route brings its own set of problems. As obvious as this might be, the Before route is a flashback type of route, which means that after finishing Watashi's route and wanting some answers, you have no other option other than reading through a series of events prior to everything that happened before the after route that seemingly don't move the plot forward in any way. On top of that, there's a bit of a tonal whiplash between the intense and desperate moments taking place inside the facility and the after route, and the almost slice of life high school boy event from the before route. Overall though, the pacing is probably the visual novel's biggest issue. Even after finishing these 2 routes and unlocking the route that leads into the true ending, there's still quite a few flashbacks to go through. While I actually did enjoy some of these as they fleshed out each character quite well, I can see how they may annoy some people who only want to get on with the plot, which I can fully understand, because even if so far I've sounded quite negative on this visual novel, the reality is that it absolutely nails the most important part, namely the mystery. This is a visual novel that hits some absolutely incredible highs. Every twist, every surprise, every big plot event, all of it is properly built up and properly foreshadowed where nothing feels shoehorned or undeserved. By the end, there's not a single plot thread that hasn't been resolved, which, considering the amount of questions this game bombards you with at times, is nothing short of remarkable. Every time the game drops one of these revelations, it makes you rethink all previous scenes and their new implications within the overarching story. That almost triumphant feeling of slowly figuring out the plot piece by piece never truly fades away. Even after the credits rolled, was I racking my brains making sure I got everything right. It's too bad that some might call it quits before they can get to this stage, and even though I think it's absolutely worth the effort, I can't say that I would really blame them. In terms of gameplay, the game's choice system is also quite a unique one. Instead of giving you a couple of dialogue choices, the game makes you pick sides whenever there's a conflict or crucial plot point using a wheel-like radial system, also called the Sense Sympathy System. That's a fancy name, right? That lets you determine your affinity towards any character relevant to the scene. Yeah, it's as confusing as it sounds. Sometimes it warns you when you're about to make a terrible choice, but other times it just doesn't. It's entirely possible that you could be walking right into a bad ending without realizing it before it's too late. Considering the amount of bad endings that this game has, it can be quite vexing not knowing what mistake brought you that result, or more importantly, when and where did it happen. In my opinion, this is very much a play with the guide by your side visual novel. Having said that, if you do get a bad ending, the game does give you a little bit of a hint at where you went wrong, and you're not too far away from a checkpoint to go and try again. Having said that, the way this system ties the overall plot points is actually pretty clever. So personally, I'm more than willing to forgive its slight, convolutedness. In terms of visuals, while on their own there's nothing wrong with the visuals, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something a bit off about them. First of all, the character designs, particularly of the girls, felt a little bit out of place. Maybe I'm comparing it too heavily to the style of the Zero Escape games or the Infinity Trilogy, but here they looked a little bit too cutesy, which I wouldn't have any problem with were this a romance comedy visual novel. But considering the overall dark tone of the story, I thought they were a little bit distracting at first, but when judged on their own, they are actually quite detailed and expressive, so they eventually grew on me. The other issue I had was with the backgrounds. This may be slightly an unfair criticism considering that the story mostly takes place in the same spot, but that means that you would constantly look at the exact same backgrounds time and time again. It gets a little tiring seeing the same generic looking corridors and same generic looking officers over and over. In reality, it's nothing deal breaking, but I feel that this is one of the reasons why pacing felt so slow at times. The CGs, however, were overall of decent quality and certainly helped out breaking that repetition. In the sound department, I don't have any major complaints. The game is fully voice acted with quality voice actors. Although it's all in Japanese, as to be expected from any Japanese visual novel, they all gave really solid performances which made the most intense and emotional scenes hit how they needed to be hit. Music was pretty good as well, with the mystery themed tracks being, probably the better out of the bunch. In terms of value, Root Double goes for £35.99, £39.99 in euros or your regional equivalent, with a launch discount of 20% on the eShop. The game takes around 25 to 30 hours if you go straight for the ending, and around 40 or maybe more if you want to see everything that it has to offer. The content is most certainly there, but I can't shake the feeling that this might be a hard sell even for visual novel standards, especially considering that some of the extra content are just bad endings, which not that many people may care for. I think with a discount applied at the beginning, it might just be, spot on, but anything more than that, unless you're a hardcore visual novel fan, you may feel like a little bit too much. There is a physical version though coming from Strictly Limited Games and also in retail, I believe. Overall, if there's something I value above anything else, it's ambition, which Root Double has in spades. For all its flaws and annoyances, at its core, this game features a meticulously well thought out intrigue where every piece of the puzzle falls exactly where it needs to. It just happens to be that, a lot of patience is required to get to that point. People who are used to visual novels and their often overly long exposition sections might not mind it that much, but this isn't exactly newcomer friendly. Maybe if you're just tired of waiting for the Zero Escape games to come to the Switch, then Root Double may fill that gap rather nicely for the time being. So in the end, I think I would still recommend Root Double just a little bit cautiously. A 7.5 out of 10. Alright, many thanks to Marion for writing this review for us. For me, he's one of the people I trust the most in terms of, opinions on visual novels. Many thanks to our YouTube members, Gannicus, God of Resin, Santa Tartaruga, Jonathan Rumor, Dane Wilkinson, and Brent McLean, our executive producers. Thank you for your support. Plus, you watching right now, thank you kindly. Please check out some other visual novel goodness that we have for you if you enjoy this niche genre. We'll see you next time, guys. Take care.